Good stuff from Garrett Crochet, and I think everybody agrees for the most part, even though they gave up a lot. And I know there's that portion of Red Sox fans who are just going to be unhappy with whatever they do right now. They gave up all that for one pitcher, but
They didn't
let's agree
spend.
it's a good move. They still haven't spent any money. It's a good move. It would be a great first move. In other words, there are other moves to come. If we look back at the Garrett Crochet as the start of what they did this offseason, I think we're all going to be pretty happy. So the question is, Alex, what do they do from here? Where do they go next? Let's sort of maybe not break it down in the order of which they'll do it, but let's look at where they can still help themselves, beginning with that rotation, right? If he makes this rotation better, does he make it good enough? Do they need one more arm? I think they do, and there are arms available both on the free agent market and the trade market.
Well, I even want to rewind. Before we look forward, one thing that was interesting to me that I've unearthed is that the Red Sox were open to the idea of both signing and trading for Crochet. So that gives you a little bit of a sense of where they're at in terms of the ambition of upgrading the rotation. Like they see this as a path to being a pretty important one, to getting a lot better. And so that also suggests, though, if they were thinking about, their offer to Fried got out to 7 years and got up into the vicinity of $200 million, albeit with, I think that 190, they were at 190-ish with a willingness to go above that, albeit with some deferrals. That suggests that they are willing to spend more on top talents in the market. Now, we'll see whether or not that actually happens, but that tells you a lot about their thinking. And I think that I would be shocked at this point if the Red Sox didn't add another starter who they thought was at least capable of being a mid-rotation guy or better. Like, I think that like a guy like Walker Buehler is almost the floor of what they seem to be pursuing for the rest of this offseason. Buehler obviously has been a top of the rotation guy in the past. He struggled a lot in 2024 as he was coming back with his first full year from Tommy John surgery, and so was more of a back end guy for the Dodgers when he was pitching, until he looked really, really good in his last couple of appearances. The most memorable that he will probably ever have in his career in the World Series. So that was a good finishing kick for him. Good job, Walker Buehler.
Yeah, 10 innings, right? 10 scoreless innings to end his postseason run, including, as you said, the final out of the World Series. I mean, you say it's the biggest one of his career. I don't know if he beats the Dodgers with the Red Sox in Game 7 of the World Series. That might be better, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Yeah, I agree. Walker Buehler would be a good fit, but when you're saying a guy who could be a middle of the rotation or better, that's not a description for Corbin Burnes, who is still sitting out there. And we keep hearing San Francisco and Toronto, but we haven't seen anything done. Is there an opportunity for the Red Sox? It's going to take more than 7 years and 190. We know that. But is there an opening here for the Red Sox to pull this off, or is that sort of an opportunity that's already moved away from them?
Yeah, the thing that strikes me is that it's not just 7/190. It'll probably have to beat the Fried contract that happened with the Yankees of 8 and 208, right? Like, at least in terms of total value, in terms of guarantee of the deal. So are the Red Sox going to have an appetite it was 8 and 218 for Fried. So are the Red Sox going to have an appetite to spend that much on a starter? Not sure. I don't think the door is completely closed, but I think that I think that certainly the urgency that they feel in terms of adding to the top of the rotation was kind of measured to some degree by the acquisition of Crochet. I think they would love to add 2 top of the rotation starters, but they're probably going to feel more comfortable having identifying a limit for Burnes and not going past that because of what they already have. So I think beyond that, you take an open-minded approach to the rest of the free agent market. Obviously, like I said, we've heard things connecting them to Buehler. Haven't heard a lot about Jack Flaherty, which is kind of interesting, given that he does have some experience in the AL East, although he's been much better not in the AL East. But he's someone who represents a kind of next tier. Manaea is certainly still out there. He's interesting, left-handed, looked outstanding down the stretch last year. So do you want to, insofar as they were willing to bet on Crochet based on what he showed in his first exposure to starting, do the Red Sox feel like they can bet on Manaea based on what he showed just in the second half of last year, which was kind of frontline stuff? And he was a mid-rotation guy outside of that in other parts of his career. Would they want to bring back Nick Pivetta? I don't think that the door is closed there. and then you get into the
I
trades.
agree. They still like Nick Pivetta. There's no doubt about that. You ask up and down that organization, they very much still like Nick Pivetta. And I think, that was. And by the way, you ask how the winter meetings was. The low point, I think, for somebody covering the Red Sox was after not getting Soto and not getting Fried. When you woke up that morning, I think it was Wednesday morning originally, well before the Crochet stuff, and the stories out there were about how the Red Sox are interested in Nick Pivetta. And Red Sox fans, after being tantalized by Soto and Fried, were not interested in Nick Pivetta as being the big acquisition. Now, bringing him back as a depth guy, I think makes a lot of sense. So does the trade market, right? And we've been talking about Seattle as a dance partner with the Red Sox for a long time. Pittsburgh profiles very similar, right? A pitching-rich organization that needs help offensively. It's why Nick York, Quinn Priester happened last year, right? So those are two organizations that we've talked a lot about for a while, especially Seattle, right? Because they have starting pitching. And as soon as this deal was over and Tristan Casas was still a member of the Red Sox and Willie Abreu was still a member of the Red Sox, it felt like we hadn't even finished tweeting about Garrett Crochet yet. And people were talking about Seattle. Obviously, Gilbert or Kirby or Wu are young guys that any team would want, but it makes sense that Seattle might be dangling Luis Castillo, who is the one owed the money over the next few seasons. You said that you had learned that a deal with Casas for Castillo was a straight out no. Is that still what you're hearing? And what are you hearing about Seattle?
That's not what Seattle would be interested in as a potential package. Like their focus would be on other parts of the infield. And I should also step back. The Red Sox wouldn't have a ton of interest in a Castillo for Casas deal either. The reason being, if they did that, then all of a sudden you're taking on Luis Castillo, really who's been an all-star caliber pitcher in multiple years of his career, but had a down year last year. And you do start to worry about whether or not the mileage is going to be taking him in that direction. So you're adding a guy who you probably profile as like a mid-rotation starter, albeit one who, like every Seattle starter, has drastic home road splits. Like the Seattle starters look, positively, by and large, like pretty mediocre when you get them out of T-Mobile Park. So there are some concerns there. The Red Sox would be adding starting pitching depth, but they would have to replace the production of Casas. So they're taking on the money that's owed to Castillo. They would probably have to be hitting the free agent market in like the Christian Walker class, right, to get a first baseman. Or maybe you're looking at taking on, Bregman or Arenado, but you're paying double, right? Like instead of having the one controllable guy who's going to cost you $800,000 this year in Casas and who you think has a chance to be a 40 home run hitter, you're making two separate moves where you're adding on a decent amount of money. How much better are you getting? Especially because Seattle's interest, if they move Castillo, they're probably going to need starting pitching back in addition to some position playing help. Where would that starting pitching help come from? Well, they'd be acquiring a guy like Cutter Crawford, who just on the surface, if you stuck Cutter Crawford in T-Mobile Park, he would probably be in the mix for the Cy Young. Like his only issue last year was that he gave up home runs. Stick him in a park where the home runs go to die, and all of a sudden Cutter Crawford looks amazing. But you're probably looking at Cutter Crawford plus this, and this is just my speculation, so I don't want to. But you would probably Seattle is probably going to be thinking, if we trade you Castillo, we want Cutter Crawford, who is going to be inexpensive and really, really good in our park, plus some position help. Let's say someone who would offer them depth, like a David Hamilton or someone, right? Someone who has clear major league value right now. And so that's probably more of what, and so the Red Sox probably value guys like that pretty highly. And so it's just a difficult deal to bring together. I'm not saying that rules it out, but you have some challenges in terms of figuring out how to make the pieces fit in a way that both teams would walk away satisfied. So that's why the Casas for Castillo thing didn't really have legs.
What about Pittsburgh? Their pitching is younger. Their pitching is more controllable. Their pitching is not as expensive. And they feel, with Paul Skeens up now, and they think O'Neal Cruz is going to have a bounce back with a new position, like they feel they can compete for that division. Is there a trade to be made there? We heard Jones as a guy that obviously anybody would like. Would the Pirates move him, and how much would you have to give up?
I think people in the industry were shocked to learn that Jones, in fact, was available this offseason because he has electric stuff. We talked about what the crochet heat maps look like, where, like, there's the eye of Jupiter in the middle of the strike zone, and that's fine for allowing him to dominate. Jones is kind of in the same category from the right side. And he has 5 years of control remaining, so you're looking at him. He's more valuable than Garrett Crochet as a trade chip, right? 5 years versus 2 years, and someone who already, who doesn't have quite the same health questions that Crochet did. So they're open to it, but it's going to take a Herschel Walker package in order to be able to do it, right? So I think that if the Red Sox were to talk with the Pirates about Jones, my guess is that Meyer would have to be right in the middle of it. And he's a guy who wasn't going to be available in any scenario that involved Garrett Crochet. I think that you would have to have Meyer would be the starting point, and then from there you are continuing to add to it. So you might be looking at maybe in that case, and again speculating, you're looking at like Meyer and like put in a Crawford or someone as a second piece, and then drawing from somewhere else in the top 10 prospects. I don't know. Maybe you're putting in like a Miguel Blaze who has like all the upside in the world, but whose performance has been really even. Like, you're putting together a package of a major package in exchange for someone who would be spectacular. And if you were to pair Crochet and Jones for the next couple of years, or if you get the extension done for, well beyond that, the next 5 years or more, then you have a pretty interesting pathway, a pretty interesting foundation for being a really good team moving forward. But it's just going to be really interesting to see whether or not teams are able to find a package that they can offer to the Pirates that the Pirates would ultimately find satisfying. My guess is that the easier guy for the Pirates to move is going to be someone like Mitch Keller, who is more of a mid-rotation guy, he's going to cost a little bit more money. It's not insane money. There's still some surplus value there, and there's reliability there, but it's just hard for the Pirates, I think, to trade away the shoot the moon guys, who could really be the anchors of a world of whatever their view is of their ability to contend is built around their starting pitchers.
No doubt
I
about
mean, you
that. All
talked
right,
a
let's
lot to
move.
the Pirates. Well,
Yeah.
I'm interested in your sense of where the Pirates are at, and
There's no
and
doubt.
yeah,
There is no doubt that they believe they are a couple of bats away from contending, for the division title. And again, wherever goes after that. But they think that division is there to compete in, and they know they need to add to the offense to do it.